Bit of a mistake from me. Hello and welcome to the Rewind, where I'm joined by my fabulous and really handsome guest, PiraTechnics, who is also the host. Is it a host? Do you call it a host of the OPL? Well, no, Niche is the host.
Nick Boy is the host.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
his
guess
niche.
yeah, that's the niche. But well, I guess yeah, I'm Nick Boy and you're PiraTechnics. Is
Yeah,
that how?
yeah. I'm the play-by-play caster. I guess I host the desk, if you will. I don't
Yes.
know.
Yes.
But yeah, no, just the main play-by-play.
Yep. And I guess what we're going to be talking about is just a quick recap for everyone that is somewhat here or here right now. We're going to talk about the OPL Grand Final. The gauntlet was insane. And for those of you that I'm sure all of you know Pyra, but for those of you that don't know Pyra, we'll talk a bit about Pyra, his history, how he got into esports, and what he's doing right now. And Loltize has already said that he's coming to Gate Crash Pyra, so I think it's fair to say that everyone knows PiraTechnics.
Yeah, Reese is a good dude.
Yeah.
Got to meet him last year in Melbourne. That's after years and years of getting my ties critiqued.
Oh
Mostly
yes,
positive though.
yes. Like,
Yeah.
and then I have years and years of not having a tie and getting critiqued.
Oh, is that why he started that?
Yeah.
Because he didn't have any Oceanic
No.
tie wearing people to look up to. Okay.
Yeah, we had no ties down here, so and he'd just be triggered that there's no ties, so he had to flame someone else. Is that a
Gotcha.
Harry Potter coffee mug? Apparently.
It is. It is the Deathly Hollows, and it's very appropriate because when I wake up in the morning and make tea before I actually have it, I do. I feel like death, and then I become the master of death. So yeah,
Yeah, that that got real grim real quick.
that's what happens when you collect all three. You know, you
Oh,
make coffee in them, right? That's how it works, or tea.
yeah, sure. So
I don't know.
Pyra, you know what we'll start? We'll start with how did you get involved in esports and what did your break look like? And you know, we spoke about this a little bit before, and what are you doing now?
All right. Well, okay. So that's a
That's
multi-part
a
question.
loaded
Cutting
question.
straight to it.
Yeah, so that's a three-part
Uh,
question. I'll ask you, how did you get into
yeah.
esports?
Do you want the short version or the long version?
Give me the best version.
Best version. All right. Well, it depends on how much time you're gonna have, but let's say so back in about 2012, I graduated from uni, and I was kind of like looking around for stuff I wanted to do, and I ended up just watching a lot of esports. So that's how I really became aware of what it was. It was mostly StarCraft back then, but I watched a little League.
Mhm.
And once I graduated into a job and kind of just started working there a little bit, I kept watching lots and lots of esports. And as the job got steadily less, what's the word, less fulfilling, I watched a lot more esports to the detriment of all else in my life, which wasn't a whole lot. So basically, I just got so obsessed with watching stuff, and I just started thinking like, why don't I just get involved in this? Why don't I throw myself into it? So I actually ended up eventually quitting that job and using money that I banked up for a year and a half prior to sort of train myself to be a shoutcaster and live off of that saved money. And that's how I really got into it.
Mm.
I was doing League at the time pretty much exclusively, so that was like a little down the line. But how I kind of got a break, how I got into it in like a professional sense, I suppose it was doing the LPL English project with Friskuren
Mm.
back in the day. And, this also includes guys that have been in and around the Oceanic scene. Razzleplasm was originally one of our viewers, then he became like an analyst and stuff. Kelsey Moser was a part of that project as well. She was kind of the brains behind the operation. So that kind of gained some traction because there was no LPL coverage at the time,
And I feel
and
like
that's when Riot noticed us.
yeah, and I feel like the LPL, so the LPL team too is like the team that you've just mentioned, the people you've mentioned was like really stacked, like including yourself, like of talent.
Oh, thank you very much. And it was a lot of really good people
Yeah.
that just wanted to work. I mean, I don't think I would have been half as motivated had I not been surrounded by people that really just were so gung ho about it, and that's what was super cool. I didn't mind waking up at like 1 in the morning Pacific time to cover Chinese League of Legends because everyone was just so stoked to do it. Talk about making your cup of tea when you wake up.
Yeah.
So we did that for months and months, and it eventually paid off in the sense that we started to get some notoriety, and Riot noticed us, and I was the first one out of that crew to really get hired by Riot, and it felt a little kind of bittersweet to leave some of that behind because the LPL project then transitioned to OS afterwards, and a lot of people were kind of out of it, but it worked out in the long run, so that was exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like such a feels good story. Is like you put in the work, like you pursued it, you took somewhat of like you did take a risk, you know what I mean? And then like
Yeah, we got lucky too. Like
well,
I
okay,
don't
I
want
feel like
to.
you create your own luck. I
You
really feel like
do,
you create your own luck.
but I don't want to tell people that like all you got to do is just jump onto a broadcast
Oh,
and you'll just make it given the time. Like
yeah.
I think that's the thing I want to impart is like, we were in the right place at the right time.
Mm,
But to your point, I do think that if you keep working
mm.
towards the right place, the right time will come along sooner or later. It just depends on how long you're able and willing to wait.
Yeah, and I think that was like kind of we touched on this like off broadcast. Is like when we started streams or we started things or when we like started a team as an example, like you don't jump in and have a million viewers straight or a million fans or a million this straight away. It's kind of
Yeah,
like
you
the
got to work
process.
your way
Yeah,
up.
you work your way into it. Um, like you said, like you don't know sometimes you don't know how long that's gonna take. But yeah. Um, and so, well, okay, I think that was like one and two parts of the question. So we know how you started. We know somewhat of like the break you got in esports. And now tell me what you're doing because we spoke about this off stream and I found it very interesting. Like, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so for those of you that haven't really followed what I've done the last year or two, I've left Ride to go freelance and kind of branch out to a couple of other esports and really just try and see what else I'm able to do because I'm primarily known for League of Legends, especially in Europe.
Mm,
But I wanted to really kind of stretch out and see what other stuff is out there for me. So the first thing I did was I did a game called Rules of Survival, which is based out of China with another oceanic caster fish. And I think you're very familiar with him as well, Juves. Uh, so that was kind of a cool like first pass at something different. I'm also obviously here doing the OPL for this split, but I've also been working on creating my own content. Currently, I'm producing a podcast. We just launched our fourth episode today. It covers like mostly like esports in kind of like a general sense. We do some like League and Overwatch stuff. We talk a little bit about like CS:GO and other major events that have been going on. We do gaming news, headlines. We do pop culture stuff, so everything from movies to television to music. And it's just like a weekly show that I do with two of my buddies, both based back in the U.S. So it's kind of an interesting time zone shuffle.
yeah, right.
In addition, yeah, it's hard. It is really hard, but they're really accommodating, which is nice. In addition to that, I'm doing some Rocket League stuff, like community Rocket League at the moment here while I'm in Australia. I'm hoping to maybe do some bigger events once I head back to Europe, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I guess one of the kind of directions that your career has taken you is to the OPL, and what we had in the OPL last week, is it last week? Yeah, last week was the
Feels like it
Gauntlet.
was longer, wasn't it?
No, it does, right? You have to actually think like double check. Wait, is there a grand final coming up or what? So, yeah, last week, Order. I don't even have to really run through the results because Order literally swept the Gauntlet. So, yeah, like, what was your thoughts watching the Gauntlet matches? Because Gauntlet, Order, for those that don't know, beat Mammoth. Then the next day they beat Avant. Then the next day they beat Chiefs, and they were probably the underdogs in every single one of those games.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I came into the day before Mammoth Order went down. So
Mm,
before the whole gauntlet started, my mind I was kind of like, okay, Order, they squeaked in. Chiefs helped them get in. They looked on better form, but I didn't really expect them to make it past Mammoth, and I don't think a lot of people did. So I looked at that game before the start of it and just thought, yeah, like I think this could end up being close, but Mammoth are a skilled team. They're made up of like former OPL champions and like really experienced players. And Order, well, good. I don't think are consistently good enough.
yeah.
And then on the day, I don't know what it was. Like, I'm not a very analytical player. On the day, someone came up to me and asked, like, who do you think is going to win? And I just had this feeling like, you know, yesterday I felt certain. Today I don't feel so certain, and I don't know why. So I actually called Order to win, and I even said it was 3-1. And it was just like a feeling. It wasn't like any sort of analysis behind it. I just kind of had this feeling that like something different might happen. And a part of it was Order just like they just leveled up like super hardcore on that day. Like Dream played absolutely out of his
Yeah.
mind. I think Tally's been consistent all split, but the rest of the team really started going up around him. I think Swiffer Simon played really well on top of it, and just the whole team really firing on all cylinders. So they beat Mammoth, and I think Mammoth kind of folded a little bit because they tend to do that sometimes under pressure. The team clearly has some emotional momentum issues. They really need to build on it. and better luck for next split. They'll still think they're a team stacked with talent, but they get inside their own head sometimes, and they're their own worst enemy. The next day, I actually felt a little better about the order chances. I still didn't think it was going to be a sweep, but I looked at Avant and I'm kind of like, well, we've seen them great in best of one, but what if it doesn't matter? What if it's really just down to order are going to be able to outplay them on like a best of situation, and they did. I still didn't expect it to be 3-0, so I was kind of surprised by that. I actually picked it like 3-2, I think. So first day I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, all right. Well, they beat Mammoth. Well, maybe they'll beat Avant. Maybe they won't. Then they beat Avant, and they're like, well, okay, maybe they're legit, but they won't beat Chiefs.
No, yeah, when they beat Avant, it's like, oh, they've done their gauntlet run. That was a nice gauntlet run. Good on them.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
That's exactly what I thought.
Yeah.
And then they go up against Chiefs, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I think this is where the buck stops, because Chiefs are just so good.
Yeah.
And they freaking come in and 3-0 them.
Before the Chiefs game? Before the Chiefs game, I thought Chiefs were the best team in the league. I thought Bombers were better than them individually and often won through like just really good micro, but I thought Chiefs were as a package the best in the league.
I was kind of there with you. Like I think there was some question marks to ask. Like I mean, I looked at certain players and thought like, how well will they hold up in a best of series? Ayla's a rookie. I think Only's had some up and down performances, but you've got Swipers, like one of the most consistent players the OPL's ever had, rocking the top lane, et cetera, et cetera. Like, he's a great player. I didn't expect him to fold in the face of Tally. I think Raze has had some incredible stand-up performance. I think Claire's been really good. And they're just a good team.
Yeah.
And that's why I just didn't have any worries that they would beat Order. And in fact, maybe crush them, but I was completely wrong. And it was like one game off. It's like, okay, that was a game. You're like, all right, well, maybe it's a bit surprising, but we'll see them turn it around. And then they didn't, and then they didn't again. And all of a sudden, like, all expectations are out the window. Like, I'm still in a place where I'm feeling like, oh, yeah, well, this is where it stops. Order are going to lose to Bombers. But then I'm like, are they, though?
Yeah.
I don't know anymore.
Now you're like, you've gone from the not optimistic to like this is the end of the road to this can no longer be the end of the road. It has to be optimism now. Like that's it. You have to be optimistic because they've
cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
The moment I throw my weight behind them, they're gonna get crushed.
I know, and that's what's scary. Like I think that's what's the scary thing about like getting behind teams that do so well. You become so invested. You're like, oh man, I actually love this team now. And even for someone that's associated with like another team, I'm like, damn, that gauntlet run was fun to watch. And I'm behind the team. It's like the classic underdog story, right? You always want the underdog to win.
It's great. I mean, the fact that they made it all the way from the bottom, they barely into the playoffs themselves, and then they actually ran the gauntlet, which no team has done before. And that's what makes a format like a gauntlet really exciting, the possibility of something like that happening. And it just rarely ever comes to fruition, but this is a true Cinderella story now. Before we move off the specifics too, I'm not an analytical guy, especially, but I do want to give a lot of credit to Choo Choo's and the Order org for really developing some solid drafting. I think that was a big part of their success against Chiefs, against Avant, and also against Mammoth. So especially when I talk with a lot of the other commentators, they're all very impressed with the level of like out of game thinking that Order is doing right now. And if anybody is going to be able to upset the apple cart against Bombers, like that is going to be the way they do it.
Yeah, so I actually have to agree with you there. I think Order went from a team who like were consistently inconsistent with how poor their drafts were sometimes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like
regular split felt really weird. It really felt back and forth. They gave away a lot of power picks.
Yeah, and regular split, it's like, damn, they lost this game from draft, and then I think over Gauntlet Weekend, I think they close to won every single draft. Even in the game they lost, I can't remember the draft to be fair, but I think they were very close to winning every draft in all of the games. Which is like, that's like a really poggers thing. I said poggers again. I said poggers again.
You were telling me that's how the team talks, right?
Yeah, it's when you hang out with kids, you talk like the kids. You gotta get.
I thought it was Bryce because I'm getting it from him.
It definitely.
Like, he'll just pop into the room and be like, "That's a poggers."
Nah, Ajim, it was Hayri. It was Hayri that started it. Ajim just kind of you couldn't not get along with it.
Yeah, it's viral language. It happened in Europe too, by the way.
Oh, did it?
Players have their own, they always have their. It's like not even English, and this is coming from like the native English speakers as well. Like it's just weird, like semi-pro speak. I don't know what it is, but it gets in your brain. Like this guy is actually smurfing.
Yeah. That's like a thing now. I think that's what it is now. He's oh my god, he's smurfing. Yeah, and so I guess the other thing now, which leads on from I guess the gauntlet match and us reviving the gauntlet matches, is like no team has ever won the OPL from 5th place.
They have. I mean, there's only been.
There's only
I'm
been a
pretty sure
couple
since the OPL
gauntlets,
started,
to
there's
be
only been
fair.
2 teams that have won, right?
Yeah, but and I think they've
It's only been Direwolves or Chiefs.
yes, but uh, like before the OPL, AV did win a tournament, but that's
Yeah,
not really
and
placing.
and like
So
Legacy have been in like a million finals, even though they
no, Legacy
have
did
another
win one. Tim Wendell has been overseas.
team.
Yeah,
Okay, fair enough.
yeah.
Team Wendell.
Tim Wendell has been overseas, so I know he's gonna probably watch this one back and be like,
I love that
tell
Carter
you
just
what,
really
mate, I've won an
backwards.
OPL. What do you mean? You know?
Yeah, okay. Forgive me, Lord Carbon.
Yeah. So what do you think? Like, I actually no, right. What's your picks then from the gauntlet? Like, who stood out to you? Because it doesn't have
Oh,
to
just
be.
like overall.
Yeah, well, because I know, like, obviously the easy answer is, like, well, Order stood out, but was there any players from losing teams or specifically from Order that you want to shout out that played, like, extremely well?
We'll start with the easy one, and that's on order. I think Dream
Mm.
has played better than I've ever seen a rookie play under pressure, or at least in a long, long time. Because I mean, yeah, he's not technically a rookie, but this is his first gauntlet. He had like one split. I think he was with Sin, right?
It was on my team.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Sin Juves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dream looked incredible because he was good in the regular split, like good. And don't get me wrong, Jake has been a big part of that as well. But there was this whole nother level. He was going toe to toe, keeping pressure on with bot lanes that include the likes of Raze and Ayla, that include King and Destiny. Like these are names that people know in the OPL. Like and that is really impressive to see Order's bottom lane really step it up, and especially Dream. As somebody who is an AD carry main, and I kind of always watch for those like big PogChamp like standout things.
Yeah.
He is a very consistent player in the gauntlet, and that is not easy to do when you're playing 3 to 5 games per day, 3 days going on. So like that's really impressive. And I think he stood out the most to me compared to his regular split performance.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Where I think you had a couple of ups and downs on other players, but for the most part, there was some consistency there.
I was so
Um,
surprised. I was so
yeah,
surprised that they were able to, like, I'm gonna put quote unquote like in talking marks, they somewhat lane kingdom the Mammoth bot lane, because like I
they
consider
did.
Destiny and King to be like really insane, but I think like Jake and Dream had somewhat of like a rougher time in the Chief game, especially in game 3. Obviously, I mean there was a lot of jungle pressure there, but
They played losing lanes well though
yeah,
in that case.
yeah, but in terms of the pure 2v2 against Mammoth, I was like, damn, like these guys had Weet-Bix this morning, you know? Like that
Yeah,
was like such a good like performance from
at
them.
least 3 Bix. They didn't just do it against King and Destiny though. They also did it against. That was why it was impressive, is because you saw this consistently happening. It wasn't just a specific 2v2.
Yeah,
And yes, Raze and Ayla definitely got the jump on them a few times, but they played a losing lane well. And they also let other parts of their team carry. But especially in the first 2 matches, I think Dream and by extension Jake did incredibly well. Other players that stood out to me, I think it's a little hard because there were a couple of players that I expected a lot more from.
yeah. Who were that? Who was
That
that?
one of them was Shock on Avant.
Mm.
He picked Zillion in that first game, and I really expected like some exciting stuff. I think the team hamstrung him a little bit because he didn't get too many good targets, and he was under pressure a lot, so he couldn't use a Zillion ult on too many people. And after that, it kind of felt a little bit like Avant went mental boom.
Yeah.
So they swapped Sybil and Swathe a couple of times. It didn't really make a big difference. I do think Sybil had some good performances, so I want to
I
shout out
think
to him
I
because
think
he
Sybil
got kind
played
of
well.
benched halfway through
Yeah.
the split.
Yeah.
I think he did. It wasn't enough. Like Avant Avant had some questionable decision making in their series, and I think that was the issue. It wasn't that individual players were bad; it was that they were forced into bad decisions because of bad decisions that they made earlier. So like unforced errors that resulted in forced errors, if that makes sense.
And I think that was kind of like a maybe
Yeah,
somewhat of like not a reoccurring theme, but it kind of popped its head in a couple of times during the split. It was like their decision making or closing out games wasn't that crisp. Like, but when they got a lead early, like they stomped you. But if
yeah,
the game was like neck and neck and you fought real hard for it, you found that sometimes like Avant struggled to close it out. And I think that's what, yeah, like what you're referencing in like game 1 specifically, because that's the one that stands out to me. I remember I was leaving the office from work actually, and I was walking down the road and I had the phone in my hand and I was looking at it, and I saw like, oh, I go, okay, AV's won this game. Like this game's over. Got into my car. I think I was idle in my car for like 5 minutes. I was like, all right, I'll just check the result before I leave. and then it's like it's a equal gold game, and I'm like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, I mean it was weird. I think Avant also like they had some leads, but they let them. It feels like they're a team that really needs to rely on like generating a lot of chaos and then closing out with a lead because of it.
Yeah.
But as you said, yeah, sometimes when the games are close, and Order is one of the best teams in the OPL at playing standard, like clean League of Legends and not giving an opening. It's when they get crushed, they get crushed. But they've played like even or able to come back into a game like really really well. So it does feel like a team effort more than anything else, despite individual performers stepping up. If I had to pick another player that I think showed really good performance, it'd probably be Rays. I kind of
Yeah.
expected it from him, but he was the only part of Chiefs that I felt played like up to form in the entire series. He just, I mean, when you're an AD carry and your team doesn't necessarily get into a position where you can get into a late game carry situation, good luck.
Yeah.
You can't really do a lot. I think Ayla was good. Also, another rookie. I think Ayla comboed really well with him. And like Ayla's been impressive, like quietly impressive all split long. But I think he definitely delivered when he needed to. The issue was, it's just when you've got like two other losing lanes and your lane's winning, but you're not like on like a hyper carry or you're not set up to like really do that. It's kind of hard. So yeah, so as far as Chiefs go, I think their bottom lane definitely played pretty well. It just wasn't enough in that best of 5. I want to say best of 3 because I'm like, how many games was it?
Mate, you should be on. I reckon you should be on the analyst couch. Everything you've said so far, I agree with.
Oh, well, you're just buttering me up, man. I'm sure you put me next to Spawn and he'll tell me like 5 things.
I'll put you next to Spawn, and the only thing he's going to be saying is like, yeah, those boys from Melbourne. I tell you what, those
that's
boys
true.
from Melbourne.
He's singing a pretty happy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he's the guy. He's the guy that's knocking door to door and saying like, "Excuse me, sir, do you have some time to talk about the Lord and Savior order?" That's what he's doing.
I love that team has the word Melbourne on its jersey and everything. It's great.
All they need to put is "by the way" on there, and then they're set.
Keep your eye out, by the way. Speaking of like Melbourne stuff, keep an eye out for the OPL content. We have a little bit of a fun piece that's going to be about Sydney and Melbourne, which I know is a big rivalry between cities.
Oh, is that a little leak? A little spoiler? Spoiler alert! Content.
Tell no one.
Eyes out
Tell no one.
for content.
I'll get hashtag fired.
Hashtag save Pyra. I guess this brings us to the next part: is Order versus Bombers. I think this is not even a sentence. These are 3 words I thought I wouldn't say this week. But that is the grand final that we have on Saturday. I will say, before I throw it to you, Order is probably one of the teams who pushed Bombers quite hard in some of their games during the regular season. There was one that comes to mind. I don't know if it was the first time they met or the second time. Order should have won the game.
I think that was the first one. I think it was like week 2 or something. Because I remember it was really close, and we were still pretty hot on Order. They had their big loss streak.
Yes, and so it's like that. Can they like find that? I think that's what makes it interesting. Is like, is it a winnable game for Order? Like, are they in it? Like, is it a 50-50? What is it?
Let me Galaxy brain you really quick.
Yeah.
Because Chiefs beat Bombers 2-1 over the course of the split. Order just beat Chiefs 3-0. So by the transitive property of League of Legends,
yes,
they're going to beat Bombers 3-1. Now, God, it's so hard to tell. Like, I think, like, here's the thing. Bombers are pound for pound like some of the strongest players in their roles. They have really, really impressive drafting to top it off. They have some solid like rookie players. Like you look at Balkan.
Yeah, Balkan's a rookie.
Been an absolute beast. Here's the thing. There's been the last week, I think, shakes a tiny bit of confidence from Bombers. They weren't necessarily playing for anything. I mean, yes, they could have been upseeded by the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Technically, if they'd lost a game, but I think they weren't at 100% in the last week of the OPL. Now, that's been a while. We've had a gauntlet since then. They've had some time to rest and relax, and they did their little get together at GG Easy, which looked really fun, by the way. I'm sad I wasn't able to go.
Yeah, I didn't go.
Yeah, but over in Melbourne. But yeah, like I think as a team, over the course of the split, they looked incredibly impressive, but they looked really impressive from the beginning. They were like on 99% form, like almost all the way through the split, only dropping a couple of games to the Chiefs. But I feel like it's gone the slightest bit downhill. And this is going to sound weird because they've been so dominant throughout the course of the split, but Bombers at the end of the split looked ever so slightly worse than Bombers at the beginning of the split. And I think it's because, for whatever reason, I don't know if they've been getting lax or their drafting hasn't been quite so good. We're just not seeing the same level of like explosiveness, and I wonder if maybe it's just like split fatigue or something. That being said, they've had a week to rest and relax. They've been able to watch Order have a huge amount of momentum going into this, and I think you really just got to break it down to like individual lanes and how they're going to perform. Because if Order come out of the game like with a gold lead or like going even mid game, I think it's hard to call. Whereas that would have been an easy Bombers win anytime during the split. So can Bombers like build up enough early on them to like crush it in some team fights? I think you're looking at players like Mimic, who had some really stand-up performances. Everyone remembers when he first piloted the Cannon and had that crazy Smebolt. I think FBI and Rogue are an absolute match for Dream and Jake.
Yeah.
And I think Ryoma is much more consistent than Swiffer, but that is taking into account the entire split. The way they're currently playing, I think Order might be able to pound for pound just about everybody except maybe Balkan.
Yep.
Because I fully expect Balkan to just get up in Spook's face and just crush him. And the trick for Order is going to be banning away as many of his high-impact junglers as you can. Even though the meta is starting to shift away from carry junglers, I still think this will favor Bombers if they go for things like Kha'Zix or Evelyn. And it's just going to be like, how is Spook's going to be able to prevent like counter jungling and just getting bopped in his own jungle?
Well, my theory, like I actually have a theory of like who wins and how. My theory is Spooks plays how he's been playing, because I think this is some of his best form in years, to be honest. Because I've played against him and now I've watched.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have that history, so that's really good to know.
And then so I think in recent years this is some of his best form that I've ever seen in terms of like setting his team up and even carrying games. Tally, the biggest I think thing is that I think Tally has somewhat of a mental blocker against Mimic. So you weren't here last year, but Order versus Legacy 2 times. Split 1 gauntlet, split 2 gauntlet, and both times Tally got destroyed by Mimic. Like, it was very close to, in some games, the sole reason that Legacy won. And so and it didn't look like Tally. Like, those games weren't Tally. So I think like if he can have a good performance, or if his game 1 is a good one, I see this being an actual really good series, because I think
Tally looked really good in the last game, by the way, up against Swiper. So like hopefully that has kind of gone away.
He just ran through him. He just literally ran through him.
By the way, that is against Swiper, who's such an incredibly solid and long-standing player in the OPL. Like that, I think that alone should kind of lend some confidence to Tally, because he individually destroyed him in that last game. Now, granted, it was a bit of a wonky like level 1 that set things up for him, but still.
Well, I see the way I look at Swiper is like he's the type of player where he can lose lane and like he'll die once, maybe he'll die twice, but the third time he sacked his lane and got his bot lane a double kill. Do you know what I mean? And Tally was
he'll find a way to be useful.
Yeah, and Tally was able to just not make that happen, not let that happen. So yeah, I think like we actually do have a grand final on our hands, like a real one that can explode kind of thing. 5 games maybe.
I also think the top lane is going to be really impactful, right? Because both, if I'm being really honest, I think these are the 2 biggest standout players on the core split. Because Tally's been the most consistent player.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's been crushed by Mimic in the past. And I don't know if he's like leveled up sufficiently since the regular split, but the team has leveled up around him. And I expect if he starts losing lane, maybe he can try to pull a Swiper.
Yeah, just sack and go.
He can be useful in other roles. I mean, give the guy something like Vlad, and he'll be fine later on. Just, you can't let yourself get like rolled in like a 30-minute game. You've got to try to stretch it out a little bit. And I think Order do have the tools to make that happen.
Yeah.
They just can't afford to get so crushed in one lane that becomes like a bulldozer lane for a team like Bombers, because Bombers know how to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. Is like, do you get crushed in lane? Yes. GG. Do you get crushed in lane? No. Okay, we have a game.
Yeah.
Like
so deny the lane kingdom and then give them an even mid game. And I think we might, you never know.
Yeah.
Maybe, but then again, there could be some like level 1 shenanigans or something like that. That'd be a really fun start to a final for me.
I'd go for it. I'd just pick Braum and just literally flash on anyone level 1.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have to expect that at that point. Now, do I want to see something? No, it's only.
Well, the way I look at a best of 5 is like, why not?
Yeah. You got time.
You got a game to fall back on.
I mean, dude, look, Order, anything's possible. Order have played 10 games and lost 1 in the last week.
Yeah, I agree. And then we've probably just done like a real analysis on the 2 teams. So now it comes into like, do you have a prediction?
Man, I don't want to make one, because then I feel like no matter what happens, I'm gonna have to. I still think Bombers are going to take this,
Yeah.
but I have a feeling it will be closer than people will imagine, and I'm torn between 3-1 and 3-2.
Yeah. Okay.
What the heck? 3-1 is a cop out for anybody, so I'm just going to say 3.
So you're on the 5 game. You're in for the long haul, 5 game long night.
Yes, but I think it's going to be a reverse sweep.
Oh, really? Like a
Yeah.
2-0 or a 2-1, and then
I think orders are going to go like
or you're cutting out.
and then it's
Sorry, you just cut
yeah.
out.
Oh no, I think orders are going to go like 2-0, 2-1 up, and then it's going to turn.
Really?
Yeah, I think Bombers are the kind of team that can race that mental really hard.
Yeah, I think when you're so dominant with your the clicking of your buttons, you can just like
Yeah.
you can just bring it back in lane. I'll tell you what. Hmm. Just
Also,
because.
by the way, there's another angle to this. I completely forgot about.
What is it?
You've got the former order bot lane going up against the new order bot lane,
I
so there's going to be some grudge match going on there.
Bro, and imagine the narrative of imagine if Order win, and like well, it's both sides. Imagine if Order win the grand final,
Yeah.
and then imagine if Bombers win the grand final, and they're both like to their former organization, they're like, damn, it was a good decision. Like, yeah.
Dude, there's gonna be a lot more than just the split on the line and MSI and all that stuff.
Oh
It's
yeah, for
exciting.
sure, for sure. Yeah. So your prediction was 3-1 or 3-2, but a reverse.
I'm gonna say 3-2.
Sorry, 3-2, but a reverse
I'm
sweep.
gonna say 3-2 Bombers, but it's gonna end. It's gonna be because of a reverse sweep.
Yeah. And because
So throwing a little curveball in there.
and because because I'm so invested into that Cinderella story kind of thing, I'm going to have to go with Order. I
All
think.
right. Hey, that's good. You want to have some variety here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So I think Order wins. I think they win 3-2 as well. I think they win 3-2, but I think if Order win the first game, it's
It's
3-1.
3-0.
No, 3-1, 3-1. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think if Order win first game, I think the series is over.
All right.
Because
Now, what if they 3-0? That'd be nuts.
no, it'd be actually unreal. No, I think
It'd be a
the
fast
reason
day.
the reason I think that they win if they win first game is because Spooks and Swiffer are so emotional, and that's the way I perceive them to be. I perceive them to be so emotional in both directions, in a positive and a negative direction. And once they win that first game, I don't think you can stop them.
Yeah. Oh, and also like again, it comes down to that bottom lane match. You actually gets into players like do they focus on like trying to roll bot lane? I mean, they did a good job against other teams with that exact strategy, and FBI and Rogue are a really big power point. The issue is if everybody ignores Mimic and Balkan,
Yeah.
they're gonna crush everybody. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a great final, man. It's such a cool story, like Cinderella from the bottom of the gauntlet. Now we hear, and then Bombers being the final boss waiting in the wings, as you know, the team that was promised as predicted from the beginning of the split. Like it's the unexpected meets the expected. It's such a good story.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go. We have a couple questions that were asked to us in chat before that were like really good questions that I didn't want to like ruin the flow of the conversation, so we can answer them now. While we're answering these questions, if you have any questions for Pyra or myself or in general about esports or anything like that, put it in the chat and we'll go through them. But the first one was from the first question, Pyra, was from EV_B. I think I said that right. I hope I said that right. It's not a hard name to say, so if I said that wrong, then I'm just really bad at it. And the question was, how do I get into esports? I think we sort of touched on that, but like for someone, I guess that's like that kind of plays games, that's within a community or like really enjoys esports. Like how would you suggest that they get in?
Yeah, so I think it just really depends on how much time you're willing and able to invest, right? Like if you want to get involved, make it into a career, you obviously are going to have to get really invested in it. So I would say like look at what you can set aside time for. Try to set a realistic goal based on that. Like, there's going to be no cap on, oh, can I make it in a year? Can I make it in 2 years? Whatever. If you want something, if you want to get involved in it, you've just got to do it. Like the best currency in esports is contribution. If you can make something and you can keep at it, like consistency, right? Like you don't just make something and then blow it off. Like that's what I'm talking about with the podcast. I was talking with you about, like you want to keep building it. Just keep doing it. Like just make something. And if you don't want to start your own thing, you just want to something like get in touch with the local team or local tournament organization, like even low-level tournaments, and pick up some skills by volunteering your time. People always need admins or Twitch mods or social media people.
Well, a lot of successful people that I've spoken to started as social media managers.
Yeah,
And
and like and I don't mean to deride people who are professional social media managers,
yeah,
but that is a job you can start with no experience.
yeah,
You just need to know how to use social media, which in this society, in this day and age, if you aren't on like Twitter or Instagram or whatever, like you're probably not interested in esports in the first place. So yeah, like just use some of the things that you already kind of like by default have and do. Like transition that like passion you have as a fan into something. Let's say you love a team. Let's say you are the biggest fan of all time of Order, and you're super excited about the finals. Literally just like start a fan club or offer to like run a tournament that they can be in like on the side and like maybe try to crowdfund an event. Like I'm doing this Rocket League stuff right now because in many ways I'm trying to I actually do have to start from ground zero in other esports.
mm,
And in Rocket League, all I really know is a bit about the game and the fact that I enjoy it because it's soccer with like cars and jets and it's like super awesome. And you know, I was lucky enough to be able to get in touch with one of the main guys in Australia that does Rocket League casting, and his name is Yummy Cheeseman, David Lane. He's a great dude. And I just reached out to him. But even if I didn't have that connection, like there were no Rocket League Oceania events, so we literally just ponied up a bit of money to start this event called the Gauntlet that he's doing now on a weekly basis. And every Thursday, I just jet over to his house and we just cast for a couple of hours, and it's super fun.
yeah,
Like you can start an event like that out of your bedroom. Now, raising money can be a little difficult. Maybe hit up a GoFundMe or something. And at the risk of this rambling on, I guess at the end of the day, just do something, build something, or contribute to something, and give all the time you are able to it. And you can turn a hobby and a passion into a career, given enough time and picking up enough skills, and you know just building a plan around it. It just depends on how much effort you're willing to put into it.
I think yeah,
So that's it.
and I think like there's no contribution too large or too small. I think that's the important thing, right?
That is, yeah. Even look, even if you just want to like mod for something, and that's a passion that you have, and you just like really you just want to like mod for your favorite streamer or favorite team, that's fine too. Like, and it doesn't have to be a career.
Yeah.
You can totally just get involved by just volunteering to get involved.
Yep. Um. Yeah, that was actually a real Pogger's answer.
Thanks,
I
man.
I'm just gonna answer because lethality. That question literally has there ever been an instance of free trading in the OPL? No. Um. Thoughts.
Easy answer.
Yeah. So thoughts. Someone. I'm not sure who asked this one. So I apologize for not grabbing your name, but if you're here, then please say something in chat. It was thoughts on. Oh, we already went through these two actually. Thoughts on Tally versus Mimic matchup. Like I went through
Yeah,
this. Yeah. So
rewind. You know, this is called the rewind.
yeah.
So
So maybe just rewind the VOD and have a look at it.
yeah, I think that's going to be hype. I learned something about it with the whole Tally last year thing.
Yeah, you can
So
use that on
yeah.
broadcast. There you go. Um.
Dude, you better believe I will. Like, where'd you get that from?
I just watched.
Sin Juves.
I watched. Um. And then I guess the last one was from Lethality Oath, and he asked, "Do you guys think an OPL team will ever make it past quarterfinals at Worlds?"
Ooh, one day. I don't want to say no because
Well, you
like
can't. I don't
think
think you
anybody,
can.
right? Like I mean, like you never know. That's the thing. Like
Yeah.
Worlds, I think in terms of like international parity, it is very slowly trending that way, and it really just depends on what team, right? Like it depends on the team, it depends on the meta. Like League is a game that has so many moving parts that it's so different. This is why I'm not an analyst, by the way, because it is so hard to be an analyst in League. So if you have a League brain, like, and you want to get involved in esports, do it because there's not that many people that are qualified. I think less than say they are, to be honest. It's a hard game, and I think things change so frequently that it could be the perfect storm. It could be the right moment. Like just because you come from a region that's less competitive in air quotes doesn't mean that you can't make a splash. I mean,
Mm.
everybody. It was what it was 5 years ago when Kaboom happened.
Oh yeah.
Like, and that was. And by the way, I was like a full on NA fanboy back then, so I was just like laughing my butt off the entire time. So anything can happen, right? I mean, for the first time, we have a non-Korean champion. Like things are changing. It's going to be an interesting couple of years in the. I think it's very possible that an OPL team can make it. It's just they've got to get a handle on the meta and how to be leveling up all the time.
Never say never, Pyra. Never say never.
Exactly.
And I get now we're at the part of the show. We're at the very nice part of the show where we go for those little promos. Um, so If you would like to stay across all the Gravitas movements in the off season and the plans and whatnot and everything like that, make sure you sign up to the website gravitas.gg. We send out like a weekly EDM, but more importantly, why I'm telling you to sign up is because of the OPL Grand Final, because of being a Poggers event, we are going to be doing a giveaway, and so one lucky person is going to win a T-shirt when Pyra starts the OPL Grand Final broadcast, and it will be announced
Right.
the week after. So make sure you sign up to gravitas.gg. That's all you have to do, and then you go in the running to win a T-shirt as soon as Pyra starts the broadcast. So if Pyra never starts the broadcast, then we all know who to blame. But I do.
What if Nick Boy starts it, then it eventually cuts to me? Is that when the contest ends?
Yeah, well, yes. That's what we.
When it cuts to me? Okay. Glad we have that out the air, clear.
Yep. And then the last but not least, and I know we touched on this a little bit, but I'm gonna put the links in there and all that, and I'm sure that you can probably elaborate on it a little bit more. But we have the GGWP podcast. So Pyra,
Hell yeah.
what
So,
tell me about it.
Yeah, so the GGWP it's short for Geeks and Gaming Worldwide Podcast. So I thought I was being really clever there. Turns out it's really difficult to search engine optimize, but that doesn't matter. So it's a weekly show that features myself and two of my co-hosts, Matt Magical, who's a semi-pro caster of League, and Chase Wassenaar, who's a writer and analyst for multiple esports. And basically, we just talk for about an hour and a half every week on results and developments in esports, from League to Overwatch to whatever kind of pops up in our feeds. Gaming news and headlines. So, like, when Apex got like a bazillion players in its first month, we talked a lot about that. Pop culture stuff. We just did like a big review of the Umbrella Academy on Netflix.
Oh, nice.
And yeah. So we, kind of all that stuff. It's sort of like an all-encompassing sort of podcast. And we release it on a weekly basis. It's on all the major platforms. We're natively on a place called Anchor. So it's anchor.fm/GGWP. Easiest place to find us. But we're also on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and pretty much every major podcast platform out there. Still working on SoundCloud, soon TM. But I can provide links for all that stuff, and you can just go ahead and search us. It's the GGWP, and we're on Twitter too. So we're at the GGW Pod.
Yeah,
that's to find us.
So that's the link I've been putting in chat. I don't have the links to your stuff, like the actual.
Yeah, I can give you that afterwards.
Yeah. Give me it afterwards. Yeah. There
on a weekly basis? We just kind of do all the talkie. Just dropped about an hour ago, so it's quite fresh. I've found out that you can definitely get it on iTunes. That's
you're
pretty
you're cutting out a little bit. Sorry.
Oh, so yeah, we just released an episode about an hour ago, and yeah, it's already gone out on iTunes, Spotify, and all the big platforms. So if you wanted to start, there's no better time than now.
And on that note, I would like to thank, and I think thanks for watching, guys, but I'd like to thank Pyra specifically for coming on. I know it's been like a real hectic, busy, crazy week for you, specifically with everything that's happening in the grand final and everything like that, and your podcast coming out. Is there anything else, anything you want to leave us with, or is that all good?
I would say thanks for having me, and and a greater thanks to the OS League community for enjoying me as a part of the OPL. It's been a wonderful split, and I'm looking forward to the grand finals because I think it's going to be an absolute banger.
Yeah, and I'm sure we would love to have you back.
We will see.
We'll leave it at we'll end it on those little that little mind game. All right, thanks guys, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks again, Pyra. Adios.